Hello everybody, it's that 30s guy here in the town of Brookhaven, It's a little confusing on Long Island because they have a township, and within the township are towns, or hamlets sometimes they're called. So this is Brookhaven within Brookhaven. And there used to be a train station here, as you could see from that picture I just showed. It was right over there where that big metal shed is. And here on May 16th, 1937, a woman stepped off a train with two little kids. One was 8, one was 5. And the mother did a ghastly deed to these children in what is a very strange, gruesome, yet interesting story in this woodsy area. It's still woodsy today. It was even more woodsy and rural in 1937, as you can imagine. Now, let's take a look at the spot where the train station used to be. Well, here's the sign. Brookhaven Hamlet. It is indeed a hamlet. And this is what remains of the old train station here. Not too much. Got a piece of cement, a railing, some more railing, and lots of trees. But there used to be a train station here until the 50s. And this was where someone named Helen Tiernan, the daughter of Finnish immigrants, lived in Manhattan. And her and her 2 kids stepped off a train here and took a walk down this road, Yaphank Avenue. Still is Yaphank Avenue. And right where, if you could see the traffic light way in the distance there, and that corner is where she took her 2 children, what she said was a picnic. But it really wasn't a picnic, because with her she brought a can of gasoline, scissors, some kind of axe-like object, and it was all in a bag, so the kids couldn't really tell what it was. But here she took her little daughter, who was also named Helen. They had the same name, Helen Tiernan. And the son, Jimmy Tiernan. She was the 5-year-old. The daughter was 8 years old. And they took a stroll down this road. And that's what we're going to do right now. Here we are at the corner I talked about, down the road. And it was somewhere over here, this patch of woods. Sorry about all the noise. This is Montauk Highway. It's a very busy road. And this patch of woods, this clearing, could have been this one right here. It's hard to tell exactly from the 1930s maps. It could have been a little further down, actually, so I'm going to go down a little more. But you get the idea. It's a woodsy area. And this is where the picnic's going to take place. But instead of a picnic, Helen Tiernan, who was born June 28th, 1911. So at this point, she had just turned 26 years old, and she took it to this patch of woods. I think it was more in this area here. Very overgrown, as you can see. Might have even been further down. There's a little creek behind there somewhere. And she poured gasoline and tried to light her kids on fire, stabbed them, and attempted to cut their throats. But she didn't plan this very well. She didn't have enough gasoline. The ground was very wet, as it is today, because it had rained overnight, just as it did last night. And she put her kids through tremendous pain. Tremendous. Couldn't even imagine. The daughter, unfortunately, died. The son did not. At some point, she probably panicked or something similar to that. And she went back to the train station, left, went back to her home in Manhattan to meet her boyfriend, her Greek boyfriend. His name was George Christopoulos, or Duslis, or Dulles, but he was known as George Christie to be simpler. And he was the reason, or so she says, so the story goes, that she killed her kids because she wouldn't marry her, he said, and because he didn't want to be a father to these kids. She was a widow. Her husband died when she was only 21 years old, unfortunately, back in 1932. That's where the two kids came from. But as she left her two kids, going back to the story, the one that survived was screaming in pain. And somebody over here, at what is now somebody's house, at this corner, as you can see, there's my nice car, and this was a gas station. It is now a house, the same structure. Heard the screams, walked over, found these two kids. One was dead, one was in pain, almost dead, to the hospital. The boy survived, somehow, and wound up living a whole life. The daughter, the 8-year-old, did not, unfortunately. And I will tell the rest of the story at the daughter's grave, which we will see in just a moment. Well, here we are, folks. Here in Patchogue, New York, a little bit to the west of the site we were just at in Brookhaven. And here, Lakeview Cemetery, is the grave of Helen Tiernan. Died May 16th, 1937. She was born April 28th, 1930, only 7 years old, very well taken care of compared to most of the other graves here. And lots of little mementos have been given. Well, I'm not the only one that knows about this story, of this poor girl who died of burn wounds. According to the police after the site, she tried to crawl to safety. She had dirt on her fingernails, and they could see it. She tried. She survived for a little bit, so it was definitely not a pleasant way to go, especially for a child. Obviously, this whole story is very sad, but it gets kind of stranger. Now, as I mentioned, Helen, the older Helen, attempted to do this because she wanted to marry her boyfriend, who said that he wouldn't marry her, even though they've been dating for a while, because of her kids. The way this, she for a whole about 24 hours, the police didn't know who these kids were, because the surviving child was able to talk, but he didn't know. He's only 5 years old. He didn't know his last name, so he only said that he was Jimmy. And so they put his picture in the paper, and they said, if you know this child, who the parents are, please let us know. And the babysitter who used to babysit the kids, or the nursemaid they call her in the newspaper, she was only 17, noticed the picture, and an alarm bell went off because she remembered Helen, the mother, just the day before this happened, went to her and said that she no longer needs her services anymore because she's sending the kids away to a family or a relative in New Jersey. And so she saw this and she told the police. They quickly found Helen, the older Helen, and she confessed to what she did. And she told the police why. Originally she said that her boyfriend was with her doing this, but that was only because the police, to get information out of her, told her that her boyfriend was already married, to get her angry, release some more information, but really wasn't true. And eventually she told the truth, that she did it on her own. She didn't put up much of a fight. She was sentenced to eventually to 20 years to life in jail. But she only winded up spending 15 years. They let her out in 1951. And she lived about another 30 years. She claimed she got out of the jail, the first thing she wanted to do was find her son. But there's no records that they ever saw each other again. I'm sure he didn't want to see her. There was sort of a history of mental illness. We're not exactly sure, but her mother was sent to Central Islip Sanitarium in the early part of the 20th century for about 5 years. It doesn't say what exactly was wrong with her, but one would think it was some kind of mental issue. But strangely enough, the people that knew Helen, that lived close to her, said she was a bit isolated, but she seemed like a loving mother. They said that Christmas before this murder happened, she got plenty of presents. Even her boyfriend bought presents for the kids. They seemed happy, normal kids. The older Helen worked. Her last job was at a garment factory. Not exactly pleasant experience, but it was enough to get by where she lived. And this whole thing is just an incredible tragedy, because Helen, she didn't have any previous criminal history. So it's really anyone's guess what would cause a mother to do such horrible things to her own children. And it's one of the great unknown mysteries of the New York area, at least in the 1930s. Now, this mother, why she picked Brookhaven too, that's a mystery. Maybe it was just the first woodsy area as she kept heading east on the Long Island Railroad, and she's looked like a good spot, so she got off. That's the most likely thing I can think of. But just one of the many 1930s stories I will be telling. This is the first one because I chose this one just because they're not all going to be this gruesome, but this was an interesting story, and there was a lot of places I could show exactly where it happened and give you a greater sense of the tragedy. But hopefully in the future we'll do some more happier stories than this one. But thank you for watching, if you did watch. And I'll see you next time.